run up here fast.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Amber. Barry Wibbles with NRCS. I get the privilege of working with our demonstration farm networks, mainly in Northeast Wisconsin. So for the past 7 to 8 years, I've been able to play that role, and I've really enjoyed it. And also I've learned a lot. And I think as an industry, from the agricultural standpoint, I think it's been very beneficial for sharing some of those lessons. And so just kind of getting into it, like Amber said, I'm going to give you a little idea about the demonstration farms here for the first 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to flip it over to a farmer panel. So I can do that. Maybe. Down, over. Yeah, that's okay.
Here. Oh,
There we
you
go.
can, now you got
So
it.
which one, down?
Over.
Sounds good. So just to paint the picture a little bit of what we're dealing with in Northeast Wisconsin, and I know that this morning Lake Erie Basin was shown, and we have some of those very similar issues that we're dealing with here in Northeast Wisconsin. And so the picture that you see there in the middle, the sediment plume coming out underneath the Tower Drive Bridge in the mouth of the Fox River has been shown many times, but it's something that is occurring in the sediment laden runoff that's going with it. At the same time, it also shows that we have made progress over the years. We have world-class walleye fishery in the bay, okay? And I don't want to, minimize that from the progress that has been made, but we got room to improve. And so water quality definitely is one of the concerns we're looking at. And so when we talk about water quality, I also like to talk about soil health, okay? And so in too many cases, we see these problems in our agricultural settings, and I'm going to say in Northeast Wisconsin, but I would, it's not just Wisconsin, it's across the country. And so when we typically talk about soil health, we're talking about 5 different elements of that. And so I have them listed there, and these pictures can kind of show you that, in these cases, we're not doing very well. So that just kind of paints the picture of what we're trying to address. I throw this slide up here because one of the earlier presentations talked about change. And yes, we have changed it. We have to make change. So adding another row of mules onto that team out there is probably not going to fix our problems. We have to start thinking about other changes. How can we think outside the box? So back in 2013, 2014, the idea of demonstration farms came to NRCS, and we started looking at how can we implement this. And so we wanted to have farms in each of the watersheds. We wanted them to have the ability to share lessons that they've learned, try new things, but also to share that peer-to-peer. So if we can get lessons that are being learned on the field, shared from farmers to farmers, it's a very successful approach. We're lucky in Northeast Wisconsin because of the Great Lakes watershed. We got the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, so we were able to use some funding for that. That, along with the partners that we have, Discovery Farms being one of them, USGS in our land conservation districts. So I throw this little cartoon up there because everybody talks about wanting change. Most of the time, nobody wants to raise their hand and be the person that wants to lead the change. I guess the one thing I have to say about the demonstration farms is that is an issue that we didn't run into. We had farmers coming to us from NRCS saying, we want to try new things. How do we go about this? And so in 2014, we started in the lower Fox River watershed. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Green Bay area, it's basically the basin that runs from Lake Winnebago up to the mouth of the Fox River, flows north. So we started with 4 farms, and as of today, we're up to 7 farms in that watershed. I throw this slide in there because it really ties together the water quality problems that we have, but also soil health. And so when we realize we have, we can use soil health, that's really the ticket to fixing water quality. It's also a message that very much resonates with agricultural producers. And so when they have something such as soil improvements on their farm that they can see, it helps them keep moving that dial towards better water quality at the same time. So the demonstration farms in Lower Fox were very successful and they're still ongoing to date. But in 2017, we had the agricultural sector in Door and Kewaunee County come to NRCS and say, hey, can we get demonstration farms brought into this watershed? And so later on, we're going to have a few of them up here on a panel. And we got a really good representation of them here in the audience too. So 2017, we moved into the Door Kewaunee demonstration farms, and the idea just kept growing. In 2018, we started the Upper Fox and Wolf. It's an extremely large basin that basically sits west of the Lower Fox with 10 farms over there. 2018, Ozaukee County. Andy's in the crowd, I believe I saw him. Really got on the bandwagon in regards to having demo farms down there, and we were able to get that going. And then in the last 2 years, we kind of closed out the agricultural basins of Lake Michigan. And so between the lakes, obviously between Lake Winnebago and Lake Michigan, and then this last year, the Green Bay West Shore, the O'Connell, Pensacola, Peshtigo watersheds. So I talked a little bit about some of our partners. In this case right here, we have been working with Discovery Farms. This is on Deer Run Dairy, who's also in attendance here. Really just looking at that system of implementing a no-till and cover crop system. And so spring of 2019, there's a picture there. Spring of 2019, the whole year of 2019 probably brings back some not so fond memories, but things are we're looking good on that field. A little bit more about edge of field monitoring. And so this is bringing that science aspect into the demonstration farms. This site is actually at Kinnard Farms in Door County. Edge of field monitoring through USGS, denitrifying bioreactor. And so I heard Dr. Kelsick talk about stacking practices. That's kind of how we say it, or bundling. This is one of those that we can have at the end, denitrifying bioreactor, taking water out of drain tiles. So I'm gonna go through a few of the practices that we're obviously using in the demonstration farms. This is not rocket science here. Winter rye establishment. Some years it's looks really nice in the fall. Sometimes we're a little bit on the later side. You see that with just peeking through the snow. But the real take-home message here is the winter rye is a great practice for us. And you see it there, just the importance of timing, the amount of biomass that we can accumulate if we're in the field at the same time of harvest. And so the fact that we're going to have 2 of the demonstration farms up here on a panel, I decided to throw a few pictures of other practices that they are doing just to share with you guys. So Jacob Bry from Bry Cycle Farms will be coming up here in a little while, but this is their farm here where they're using some of the alternative forage, an alternative forage system. And so, when we're balancing water quality and trying to make those changes, you remember back to 2019. 2019 was an extremely rough year in Northeast Wisconsin with the amount of rain that we had, and the ability to have this kind of a forage system on part of their farm and being able to get some of that manure out during the growing season was a really big plus, because in many cases our harvest was quite delayed. Another picture from a different farm that they have. They raise heifers on a farm And in this case, we started looking at rotational pasture out there, using traditional pasture, but also utilizing that fifth principle of soil health about reintegrating livestock. And so that picture on the left there is actually heifers in the spring foraging on winter rye. And so they were able to use that winter rye a couple times and then turn around and put a multi-species or kitchen sink mix in there that the heifers were also able to use during the rest of the year. And so we're just, out of box ideas, things that maybe are a little bit different, in this case that they're trying and sharing with others. Aaron Augustine from Augustine Farms, another one of our panelists today, just highlighting some of the planting green. And so this morning you heard a little bit about, again, stacking practices, no-till and cover crops. And what many of the folks up there hear me saying is not all no-tills the same, not all cover crops are the same. And so in this case, these cover crops, even if they were planted late, we're letting them go in the spring. We're increasing that biomass. We're able to trap that manure more effectively that way. So this was this last spring, which was, I would say, optimal planting conditions for the height of the rye out there, and went really well. Just to bring back old memories and maybe a hard year is 2019. Things don't always go as planned, and so planting was delayed. There's nothing fishy about these pictures. These are the same field, the same perspective looking, and so things didn't look great in the spring. But obviously, as we went through that year, the crop came through that rye very nicely, and we had a very respectable yield out there. I throw this picture in there because 2019's harvest, many of you remember, was quite delayed. And so on October 25th, corn silage still wasn't harvested at that point until the 28th. But I throw that picture in there because it shows the lack of damage that was done to that field compared to the photo on the right, which was a neighboring field that I would say was essentially tilled after harvest. It was wrecked. And so that kind of damage sticks around for a while. And so I go back to kind of the overall arching theme of today's talk about, balancing water quality and practices. And I think that shows up very well with this example. One last example at Augustine's, another practice, another one of those practices in the toolbox. Eric showed me a toolbox. We decided we've never seen a toolbox organized quite that well, but this is just another conservation practice in there, interseeding. So crimson clover, red clover, annual ryegrass, and a little bit of vetch. And so this being planted at V3, V4, V3 corn there this past spring. So very successful. We got a number of producers utilizing this kind of management. And so some of you probably are saying, oh, all these practices are great. We got cows. How do we tie this all together? And so you heard some of that this morning in regards to the low disturbance manure applications. And so that has really opened up the expansion and the utilization of some of these practices that I shared. And we're going to jump into this here shortly with the panel. Are we making progress? I throw this slide up there. This is some NDTI data that Brown County shared with us, comparing 2010 and 2018. 2010, we did not have demonstration farms. We had not really ramped up the efforts within our land conservation departments on soil health and water quality. But by 2018, we had started doing that. So the more green that you see there on the right shows, obviously more vegetation. The reason I put that up there is I can look on that map and pinpoint where each of our demonstration farms are. That tells me that method is working. A producer sharing their successes with others. I also throw this up there because one of the most enjoyable aspects of the job has been hearing some of the stories or some of the crazy things that these guys have heard from their neighbors, their parents, or just about, just seeing some things that we thought were quite far out of the box. I mean, harvesting forage when we had to wait for the snow to melt one fall. My dad thinks I'm crazy. I think a few of these guys have heard that. So, and then opportunities to learn. This conference is an excellent example of that. Just getting off the farm and seeing some new things, whether that's bringing, some experts in to talk about planter setup in a shop or taking farms to other states. We've been down to Ohio, no-till conferences and other states. Those have all been very valuable experiences. And so that's been an important aspect. And so I close with that, just giving you a little bit of an idea of what we've been doing with the demonstration farms. And with that, I'd like to bring up our 3 panelists, if they could come on up.
Barry, while they come up, can you answer what does it mean to be a demo farm? Are there requirements or?
Yeah, so when we set up our demonstration farms, we actually have a little bit of a questionnaire form that we run against people that might be interested. One of them is there a crop consultant in them and implementing a soil health, water quality management system? Are they all on the same page? That's extremely important. Willing to make changes, probably another really big deal. And then willing to share. So I throw those 3 things out there as examples. So I'm going to start this off here first. Low disturbance manure application, panel discussion here. And so I put down a few notes here in regards to what, from NRCS's standpoint, we don't have a standard for low disturbance manure application, but there's a few bullets that we look at. It's not full width tillage. So we're looking to limit that disturbance. Ideally, we're going into a living cover or a cover crop. No more than 30% of the road disturbance. Those of you that are in the land conservation business probably know the STIR rating, soil tillage intensity rating. So we're looking at a number that's 20 or less in Russell 2. And this is not written anywhere, but ideally, if we can follow that up with a no-till planting, that tells me a lot that our disturbance isn't that great. And so with that, you got a microphone. Okay, I'm going to ask each of the panelists up here to introduce themselves and then talk a little bit about their farm and how they've utilized low disturbance manure applications on that. So
yeah, can you hear me?
sounds good.
So as Barry said, my name is Aaron Augustine from Augustine Farms in southern Kewaunee County. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank Barry and Discovery Farms for having us up here today to talk about our experiences with low disturbance manure application. So just a little bit about our farm. I farm in partnership with my brother, and we are CAFO in southern Kewaunee County. We move roughly, I would say, about 13 to 15 million gallons of manure a year. And in the past, we were doing a lot of this manure application, I would say in the spring and in the fall, the majority of it in the fall. And we knew it wasn't the right thing to do. And at that time, I believe it was 2017 when demo farms came along. And we were asked to be part of the demo farms because we just wanted to try different things. So in that process, along that way, we have moved to cover crops and low disturbance manure application. So I think it was this past 2 years now, we've been 100% cover on all of our ground and 100% low DMI. It's been working great as long as we don't have another year like 2019. So what we do in our to bring into the low disturbance manure application into our farm is we get our cover crops established in fall with rye after corn silage. And then as you can see in some of the stuff that Barry showed, we do about 15% of our corn in interseeding, which has been working out great for us because we are literally right on Lake Michigan. Farmland that is 50 yards off of Lake Michigan. I think the cooler weather helps establish those grasses and those clovers. So we're gonna move that up to about 40–45% next year. So it'll alleviate the pain of trying to get rye in at the same time as chopping the corn silage in fall. And then we do run 100 acres of wheat or so, and those is a multi-species cover crop after the wheat. And then we do, when we take out our fourth crop in August, we'll put in a multi-species cover crop in that also. So where the LDMI comes in is when we get those cover crops established, I'm going to start with the wheat crop. We'll go out there and we will put the low disturbance manure on about 6,000 to 8,000 gallons per acre, or what the soils can take at that time, no more than 10,000 gallons an acre. I feel that when what we were doing in the past, we put all our nutrients out in one pass at 14,000 to 16,000 gallons. It wasn't good for the soil health, and that comes back to this demo farms of how do we put less on, but yet get our correct amount of nutrients on. So look, LDMI fit into that equation very well. We're doing multiple passes. It was hard to get the manure guys to back those rates down and come back to those fields multiple times. So with the wheat, we'll put on one pass when the cover crops come up end of August, 6,000 to 8,000 gallons. And then same with when the corn silage is harvested off, we'll on those interseeded fields, we'll come at 6,000 to 8,000 gallons. We'll plant the rye after corn silage. And sometimes the rye may be up just popping out of the ground. Other times it may be 3–4 inches tall by the time the manure applicators get there. So we'll do that in fall, and then we'll come back in spring and we'll do the same thing on those fields. Last spring, we were lucky enough where Mother Nature cooperated with us. We didn't rut those fields up, and we were able to plant 100% of our farm green. We didn't use any tillage tools last year. That's our ultimate goal in this LDMI. But with Mother Nature and rain, I think if we do put some ruts in there, we're gonna have to go out there with high-speed discs and level those back out. It's been working good so far. I guess we continue to look at more options. There are benefits and, benefits or successes and failures. Some of the failures we have is we tried the Shoemaker a couple times, but being the solids content of our manure at 12 to 18%, we can't get it through that machine with the sand. We're plugging it up. So Right Way built a machine with a wavy coulter, and that's been working great ever since then. So that works good there. One of the other things that we have been trying to work with our neighbors or our community is letting them know what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think when they see some of this manure sitting on top of the ground, we're not getting it down there 3 to 4 inches. There's a question. And so we're working with the community on educating them on the purposes of why we're doing it on these cover crops. And it's been working good so far. So that's about the gist of what we're doing. I think there'll be some questions out there. We can expand on that a little later. I'll pass it on to Jacob now.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, and also thanks, Barry, for having us out here today. It wasn't that long ago when I attended my first cover crop conference, probably 4 or 5 years ago, when all this was kind of foreign to me. So I think it's exciting for farmers that are out here watching or, thinking that, when can we get into LDMI or cover crops or what, that, you can get started whenever, just because you haven't started yet doesn't mean that you've been passed by. But anyway, so my name's Jacob Rye. I farm in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin with my brother Tony and our families. We milk dairy cows, about 700, and we also raise our young stock in custom raised heifers and have some beef cattle. So we're in the business of growing forages on our land. We don't grow any grain. And so what we've been doing over the past 3 years, thanks to LDMI and cover crops, is we've moved to pretty much a double crop system on all of our acres. So what that is that after our corn silage or sorghum sedan grass, we grow a lot of that in the summer for forage for our heifers. After that comes off in the fall, then we immediately go in with the no-till drill that we purchased and seed down either winter rye or winter triticale. We plant the winter triticale first in September, so that triticale usually follows sorghum sedan grass or our very first corn silage fields that come off. Just because we found that triticale needs to be in the ground a little bit sooner, kind of around when wheat needs to be established. But then once we've got that seeded down, then we move into rye. And so then what we've been doing is we actually are able to use a bazooka toolbar that thanks to Outagamie County Land and Water. I see Andy Kiefer's here today. He's been really great to work with. We go down and pick up that toolbar and we bring it up, and then kind of in one of the pictures that Barry showed in the middle of September, there's kind of a wide range of when we're able to get that toolbar. You know, so that one year was September, last year it was in November, for example, but we found that it's the number one priority is to get the cover crop established first to capture those last remaining growing degree units and heat days. You know, that's we sometimes get in September because usually up by us in Sturgeon Bay in October, November, we're already getting some pretty cool temperatures. So we'll use that bazooka toolbar and we'll put on around 9,000 gallons to the acre in the fall if we can on growing cover crop. And then what we'll do is we'll let that cover crop grow and soak up those nutrients over the winter and springtime. And then unlike Aaron, who plants green into that, we actually go and we take all that off following spring for forage. So we usually the triticale is a little bit higher quality, so we feed that to our dairy cows as a replacement for alfalfa. And then the winter rye is fed to our heifers. So once we take that off for forage, that's usually the end of May, right before our first cutting of alfalfa. Then we'll go in and we'll do another pass of low disturbance manure injection before we plant our corn. So that's what we did this year. For example, it was around Memorial Day. We had the bazooka up at our farm again, and we put on a little bit heavier rate, about 10 to 12,000 gallons we tried to go. And then after that, I did some modifications on my corn planter to go in and no-till corn right into that ground. So what we're trying to do is having a living cover crop on our ground pretty much every day of the year if possible. This year we had a little bit of trouble with our bazooka, and then it was Memorial Day weekend. And so we were delayed a little bit. So I think next year the goal will be to, you know, as soon as that rye or triticale is harvested, get out there and get the manure applied. And then you have to wait a couple days, you know, 2 or 3 days for the manure to dry up a little bit, but you don't want to wait too long because we found that ground after you take the triticale and raft can really turn to concrete really fast. And that's what I had some trouble with this spring is we didn't get any rain for about 3 or 4 weeks in the middle of May to end of June. Yeah, middle of May to end of June, and it was some really hot temperatures. So that's you know, like on some of the headlands and some of the parts of the field, we were seeing that I wasn't able to get enough down pressure on the planter to get the corn in. But hopefully that was an anomaly, and we'll be able to get some more timely rains around that time of the year. So we use the bazooka, and then we also have a toolbar this year that we purchased that we put on the back of one of our manure tankers to haul to our fields that are a little bit farther away. It's a Dietrich toolbar, but it has a wavy coulter, and then 2 discs that act as closing wheels behind it. And we've really had success with that. And the community is I kind of see it as the future of having, you know, these toolbars in the back of our tankers, just from the fact that, you know, we don't want to have any runoff at all. But you know, the days I think of shooting manure out the back of a tanker and broadcasting it, I think those probably need to go behind us, just from the fact that just the visual image of that, but also, you know, not losing those nutrients, you know, to the atmosphere. We want to get that manure down into the soil a couple inches so we can reduce runoff and get it to where the plants are going to need it, because especially on a year like we have coming up with high fertilizer prices, we need to we need to be able to maximize every gallon of manure that we have. For a dairy farm, that's a big asset for us, so we're gonna try to get 8,000 to 10,000 gallons on all of our acres. You know, to cut down on a lot of our input costs for B&K.
So with this one, Jesse, I'll let him introduce himself, but I'm gonna have a couple videos of some of the tools that he utilizes with his industry. So,
I'm Jesse Durachik from Reedsville, Wisconsin. I pump about 250 million gallons of dairy manure a year through drag line and direct drag from the farm and transfer irrigation crews. I guess in this video here, we had purchased a shootmaker grassland bar low disturbance manure application unit. This is pretty early on when this kind of came out. I think it's one of two in the area, maybe at the time in northeast Wisconsin. This is a winter wheat field. It was actually done later than we wanted to do the application, but it was wet and they didn't put the nitrogen on and we had to wait and they chose to still do it. So this was probably about 7,000 or 8,000 gallons of dairy manure and going on this field. Stage 1 manure out of sand farm, or a farm that's fed with sand. I was hoping this manure application unit would take off a little better. I learned a lot. They had a guy from the Netherlands here in Wisconsin working with us. And he was riding with us as we were learning the unit. Like, my boss saw what we were doing today with this unit at 7,000 gallons an acre. He'd fire me. And the DNR would be, or their regulatory would be there. These machines are made for 2,000 to 3,000 gallons an acre. But they're made for that and less water. That's the difference between Europe and us. I think we collect far more water here than they do there. They're very commonly, a high rate for them is probably 8,000 an acre. We're pushing to 15, 16, 18, but we're collecting a lot more water here than they are over there. So as a manure applicator, that's where I run into issues is low applications are great. I think it's a great deal. It's more of a cost to the grower because now we're making multiple applications, multiple setups. I'm less efficient. I can't just show up once. I'm constantly moving back and forth from farm to farm. So this is a newer unit. It's been around a couple of years, I guess. It's kind of more gaining some steam. Zimmerman makes the bar. I think they're from Wisconsin, maybe the western part of the state. Disc in front, narrow point in a shank in the bottom there. This ground was pretty wet here when they were doing the field day. It gained some popularity in the last 365 days. I've heard good, I've heard bad. I don't own one, but I think it's a tool that if we could make it work right, I think it really got some good possibilities moving forward. What I've learned over the years, getting into low disturbance manure application, cover crops being involved, there is no perfect tool. I'll tell you that right now because I've owned a bunch of them. One guy wanted an airway, we bought an airway, we used it. That's not what I want. Shootmaker, bought one, used it. If anybody's looking for one, I've got one with low acres. So end of your tax write-off, call. But so there's a lot of different unique styles out there, and there's questions probably ahead too. But we've tried and done a lot of different things. This is a dribble bar on wheat ground in spring. Another opportunity if the ground is dry to get gallons moved. Listening to some of the other speakers this morning, obviously incorporating in spring is better because we're going to have rains and we're going to have runoff. There's so many things that farmers need to weigh: nitrogen, phosphorus, incorporate, don't incorporate. If we work up the crop, what do we leave for the corn planter? I mean, there's so much stuff that the farmer needs to decide. I farm 250 acres with my brother. We don't have manure to deal with, but the decisions we make are hard enough, much less trying to incorporate manure into the plant. So this was at one of our field days that we did with Calumet County Stewardship Alliance, their new watershed group in the area. Calumet County butts up against Manitowoc County, where I'm from. Worked with that group, and this is where we top dressed manure on corn ground about B3. that gains some steam. Some guys are trying it. I don't know how many people have done it. It's another opportunity to put manure out on the field. As a manure hauler, I have an opportunity to do that. If I see one, I'd love to be out there trying to do it because we've had 18 and 19, 2018 and 2019 seasons. And tell you what, knowing a lot of manure applicators in Wisconsin, 2019 almost broke us. Not money wise, just like why do we struggle so hard? Because it was an extremely difficult year, and then everything that all our growers were working towards, like they threw a lot of their plans out the window. No till. I mean, every field that was harvested, at least in our area, was being tilled to level out ruts. And then we need to work with fields that were frozen, try to work around all the different unique scenarios that we had. So I think the only thing that's constant is change, right? So the best we can adapt is probably the only way that we can learn to work together. So me working with growers like these guys up here, I'm a part of Peninsula Pride Farms in Kewaunee County. That group is really progressive and really trying new things and working together as a group. That we're learning a lot there too as well. For me as a manure applicator, being involved with a group of really progressive farmers, it's helped me try to fine tune what I can to help them.
So we had these three folks up here. So you guys got a really good picture that there's probably not one toolbar that fits every circumstance. You know, we got to have the tool bag stacked or loaded because every year can be a little bit different and being able to change. So you heard a lot. Now's your opportunity to be able to throw questions at these three experts up here and what they've learned, the challenges or lessons that they've gained. So.
Augustine, how are you adjusting your weed control program when you're planning this for the project?
So what we've been doing is we'll have rye in the spring. We'll spray that off with Roundup. And I'm not a Roundup fan. I've been working with Barry and our agronomist to figure out other ways other than Roundup, because what is it, the giant ragweed that we had come in this year?
Yeah, we want to.
We found it on our farm, but we are, as of now, we are just using Roundup right before we plant the interseeding, and it has been working. In the past, we've used Lumax and Acheron at full rates. I think that's helped kept those cleans field. I'm going to say into the following year, because when we started this, it was really easy, and now it's beginning to be more challenging. When you look at what we have to kill there before we do our interseeding, we can't keep using Roundup because that's not going to work. Everything's going to come.
Do you want to expand on, you know, when we have those winter rye crops out there, do you see the same amount of weed pressure or coming back?
That's a good point, Barry. In 2019, Barry had some of those pictures up there that we planted winter rye in the fall of 2018 at 100 pounds an acre, planted green into it, and then we killed off the cover crop with Roundup. And I firmly believe we could have got through that whole summer without any other herbicide application because of the amount of rye we had there, but we still did come back with our little bit of Lumax. But if we can find that right ratio of pounds per acre and get that decent mat there after you spray that, you kill the rye off after you plant green, it does help with the weed suppression, but every year seems to be different. Some year we're planting into knee-high rye, other years the rye is maybe 6 inches tall, so it's challenging.
Other manure.
Sure, I've got a question for you. And Jesse, you hit a little bit on this at the end of your talk, where you talked about kind of traditionally from just the fall and spring applications, where we're looking at, you know, different opportunities about in-season, you know, applications. And I know, you know, probably from your perspective, it's really challenging because you have this big push that everyone wants manure spread on their farm at the, you know, at the right conditions, time and everything. So I guess it's a two-part question. First, kind of from Jesse, from your perspective, what are some of the emerging opportunities like these in-season applications for manure, both liquid and solid? And then I know Jake talked a little bit about this, that there's some tool rental and other things to aid, especially in that busy time period. But what do you see as kind of expanding both our spreading windows and allowing for farmers either to do it themselves or to figure out ways of really applying in season, especially when that crop need is high?
I guess the biggest player in that a lot of times, we have a lot of windows in Wisconsin. Really, we have our spring, if you want to try and put manure on corn ground, like one picture we had, there's a window, first crop, second crop, third crop, fourth crop, hay, third crop if you're further north, that you don't get 4 crops. But a lot of the time, fall, your after wheat is always an opportunity. We've got a lot of windows. The big problem is the weather. The app that somebody had, you brought up, I mean, I have it on my phone as like if we use it. Some people may think that people don't use it. I use it. My crew leaders, they use it. We look at it because, we could do top dress applications, even low disturbance applications, but if there's a call or a high risk for rain, even though the weather apps out there are becoming, it seems less and less accurate, they say 5/10 and it's 5 inches. So I don't know if they misplaced the decimal or what happened, but we try to use the tools available to us to make those management decisions, help the farmer, grower make those management decisions. When it comes to toolbars and stuff, I can only own so much iron for the windows that are a lot. It's easy to own a dribble bar. They're less expensive and there's a lot of opportunity for coverage throughout the season. When it comes to something like we talked and toyed with building a bar that go down corn rows that's all corn and not worry about running the corn down, working with a company called Cadman. And the problem is it's $500,000 machine for a window of 2-3 weeks. Now I cover, Highway 10 north up in Thorne County, but still we're all planting corn in the same 10-day to 12-week window. So we have the windows, it's just, like Barry, NRCS, or the different agencies and groups that are around can afford to own some stuff to share, great. That's awesome. I mean, I'd help advise different groups and different tools that work. Shoot-a-maker grassland bar is good when the crops come off and it's dry, sun bakes, because that's what happens in the summertime. The ground is concrete, and I'm literally pulling around $100,000 dribble bar is what it becomes. So it's like, why don't I just use my much less expensive other piece of iron in the yard? And then I have to charge. I can't just, and then it's really getting beat up because it's literally concrete. So we have tools, we have windows. It's just, I can't keep making my customers keep paying more and more and more when they're not getting paid more. There's a lot of different things going on. And then Jacob, what was Jacob's thing again? Where did I come from?
Well, just again, you hit on it a little bit, but really opportunities for, where do you see options for expanding these opportunities, either on the equipment side or spreading?
Yeah, and then I guess back to, I have a customer, Eber Farms, they own a couple pieces of their own to help touch up and do things that they want to do, experimental stuff too. And this year at their farm, we went into fall, calling it September 1st. They used every window allotted to them, and they're very unique too. They use a lot of different forages and cover crops and stuff like that. So they've got, they extend their windows. They're close to the lake, like Aaron is as well. And, going into a fall season for one of my growers, I don't know what I'm going to do on vacation. I mean, if we could get to that point, with a lot of growers, that takes all the stress off of a fall like 18 and 19. I mean, then you're just kind of spoon feeding, and then you get to pick and choose a little more of, oh, man, this field's got a little more slope than I want. And then we can start working backwards to the stuff that we're talking about this morning. The phosphorus issue. Well, we can really pick and choose our fields more to help reduce some of that stuff, knowing what March, April, May, June, what we're going to come out to.
Aaron, you had mentioned that you're working with your community to educate them about what you're doing. Can you share exactly how you're helping to educate the community and your neighbors and how that has changed that maybe perception of farming in your area?
Well, that's a great question. I always wish I could do more, but it's more of a one-on-one basis, and it's the wrong way. It's because I had complaints, and I didn't like to be the person that somebody was complaining about your farm. So we took those complaints, we found out who they were from the town board chairman, and we went over to them and we just explained to them, you know, everybody, the older generation was used to seeing the soil always turn in fall and always out there in spring working it, and explain to them why we're doing things. And then I think the light bulb kind of did go on in a lot of their heads that, oh, wow, they are trying to protect water quality. They are trying to keep the soil on the land. So it's been more of a one-on-one basis. I would like to possibly do community events, have them out to the farm. Maybe Jake can touch on that a little more. I know he has done that, but it's something there that the community needs to hear.
Yeah, sure. So through PPF and the demo farms, we've had a really great opportunity to get a lot more people out to our farm, just to see what we do every day, because people, the general public and community, they don't, I mean, it's not their fault, but they just don't know, right? They're not exposed to it. So we have every May, we host a group, it's through the, it's called like the Festival Nature Tour. So we usually get, 10 to 15 people out. It's always around Memorial Day weekend, and then we can show them about, talk to them about cover crops and talk to them about, manure applications. We really don't have anything to hide. We just need to tell, the community and the public what we're doing. And then they're always like, oh, well, I never knew that. That's kind of cool, right? Or like when you tell them that, 1 inch of rain is 26,000 gallons per acre, but we only put on 13,000 gallons per acre of manure. Well, that's only like half an inch of rain of liquid. And they're like, oh, well, that's really not that much. So there's things that we can do to tell the public and to teach them. My wife does a really good job with our Facebook page. So, she's doing stuff on there all the time, and you get questions. And I think that, through PPF and the demo farms, it's exciting to see the work that we've done the last 5 years. And it's even more exciting, to think about what we can do in the next 5 or 10 years to, really own in with the community, because, agriculture kind of needs to survive. Like, I want to have a career going forward, and I want to have it for my kids. And, our farm's been around for 115 years. So, we need to do our job as farmers to tell the public all the good things that we're doing, to show that farming can be a vital part of the economy and community going forward.
My question would be for Aaron, on these, determination of your belt stands, are you spraying them or like 40, or why are you using cover crops after a belt?
So yes, we are using cover crops, multi-species after alfalfa. We are terminating it with Roundup and 2,4-D. We have some heavy red clay soils along the lake there. And I just feel after 4 years of heavy truck traffic and tractor traffic from chopping, that we want to get some deep rooted plants in there, turnips, radishes, ryegrasses, clovers. And it seems to be working good for us. We did have a conversation with the gentleman I wrote down with this morning. He's doing it the opposite way. He's leaving his alfalfa grow a while planting into that. So I just felt with our heavier clay soils, if we can get some more diversity, more root base into that soil, that seems to help us in spring. The soil seems a lot mellower planting into it than just the regular alfalfa.
Yeah, with your manure application after corn silage harvest and rye planting sequence, one of you mentioned that you're injecting into the standing rye or into the rye. Was it up? What stage was the rye at?
It seems that we can be out there planting the rye, and it can be put manure on 5 days later when it's not up, or when it's 4 inches tall. The rye is a pretty resilient plant, and we haven't had a whole lot of issues with burning it or, running it down or whatever. It just snaps back. So I think at any stage in fall, or I know at any stage in fall, it's been working for us. It's just, when I call my manure guys, when we're done chopping corn silage, sometimes they're within a week and sometimes it's a month. So whenever they can get there, I work around their schedule. We try to have all our planting done because I don't want to go back out there. Years ago, we waited to put the manure on, work it, and then plant the rye. But it's easier to go out there with a no-till drill now, right behind the chopper, get it in, and then have those guys come with their LDMI equipment. And it works great, then you're done for the season.
Yeah, to touch on that too, rye is a really incredible crop. I don't know, it's like you can throw it on concrete and it's gonna germinate. It's on Christmas, you could do that and it would come up the next spring. One thing that's kind of been it's kind of like a mental challenge or game is like when you see this LDMI toolbar going over this, this freshly planted rye field, that looks really nice. And then you see this and you're like, man, well, I'm ripping up all the seed and but then the next spring, you can't even tell that you did this application. So I think just from the winter, like the snow and, a little bit of wind and ice, like it kind of mellows out those bumps and those ridges in the field. Because we use a disc vine and we haven't really had any issues with picking up stones or, breaking knives or anything, because the rye is something it does with the root system. It kind of mellows out the soil and so that's been something that mentally you kind of have to be able to accept, is your fields aren't going to maybe look quite as perfect and as neat as you like them to look, but that's just part of the transition, I guess.
I guess I would just add to that statement there is when we utilize manure in the fall and in a rye system, we need to be aware because manure is going to make rye explode. And so I think Aaron probably learned that a little bit with higher rates of rye in the fall. We really just don't need that much rye. And so I get in trouble from our NRCS standards that sometimes our standards are a little high on the amount of rye that should be planted out there. Manure accentuates it very much so. So nobody really wants to plant into probably 100 pounds of rye, so we can get by with 30, 40 and be doing just fine. So how much time we got, Amber? More questions? 2 minutes. Rick? Or did I jump in front of somebody? I'm sorry.
Just a simple question for Jess. You mentioned about the gentleman from the Netherlands, was it, who rode with you? And they were talking about the lower concentration, higher concentration of solids. How did they achieve that? What are those?
I guess I'm not a manure separation specialist. I'm not sure. I think a lot of the dairy there goes through digesters. I'm not sure if they're just collecting less water. I know at least in Wisconsin, some of my customers, they collect a lot of water. Leachate water off the feed pads. I don't think they have a lot of that over there.
It's a lot more coverage.
I've seen a lot. I've seen videos with farms with roofs over manure pits, and all their feed is stored inside with roofs. And their scope of farm there is not like it's here. A 400 cow dairy that's big, from what I understand. You don't see around Northeast Wisconsin nowadays. 400 cows is small where I'm from. Everything's 1,000 or more. So we're collecting due to CAFO rules and stuff like that. They're just all collecting more water and diluted manure, and that's where guys that want to go full bore into the system, no till or minimum till, we still have to turn the soil. That 14,000 gallon, 15,000 is about what a bazooka bar can hold. Would you guys agree to that?
Soil condition depending. Yep.
Yeah, soil conditions dependent, but I still do a lot of potting or disc. It's full tillage. It's 6 inches. A lot of my business is that way because we're still in that 18,000, 16, 18,000. I've got some minimum disturbance manure application. It's not a shooter maker with that grassland bar working with dirt. It leaves a zone. It's like zone till, essentially, is what it is. It's zone till. It's about 10 inches wide, and we can get 18,000 to stay there. But it's not perfect either. It has bearings. If it's got discs, you got problems. Nothing's perfect, like I said. I think there's a lot of exciting technology coming in the very near future. And I don't know if I should jump ahead of the question that we have kind of pre-set, but there's,
Go ahead.
the sooner we can get manure reduced, there's a lot of systems out there, you know, people are talking 30–40% liquid reduction. Where that water goes, I don't know, whether it's getting put back into the ditch or fed back to cattle, whatever, ideal is what's left. Then we're really gonna be in a really great spot with a higher nutrient value manure. We're talking 10–12,000 gallons an acre would be a high rate, you know, and I think, you know, it's not long. I don't think we're far out, you know. I've been really back into manure for the last 7 years, and there's a lot of things that have happened in 7 years, a lot. I think in the next 5, it's going to be changing very quickly. The number of trucks on the road is going to go down. I think things are really going to change for the better for manure application, vision of dairy. That's the one that holds us back, is the nutrients we have to deal with. How do we use them in the communities that we're in? More and more people are moving from the city to the country. They don't like the smells, all that stuff that comes along with it. I think as soon as we can reduce the volume and all that stuff, I mean, I think agriculture's picture is extremely bright. I'm excited for the next 5 years. I'm gonna be literally putting myself out of business when those systems come out, but I'll maybe, you know, downsize, enjoy life. But that's coming and it's not fun.
Well, I think with that, our time is up. But these guys are probably gonna be sticking around or through lunch. So if you have questions, try to hit them up. Otherwise, Amber,